Well, welcome. So glad to have you here. This is Unity's Positive Path of Spiritual Living, and it's a 1-hour lecture. And by the way, if you went all the way around to get here, the good news is, hi, Jack. This will be recorded too, the hi, Jack. They're going to know that you're here. So we've been given permission, the women, even though the person at the gate checking out your badge is not there anymore, the women here are going to open up for us that are going back through. So just some good news about that. And also a little about Unity of Chautauqua. We are a summer program for the 9 weeks here. We do Wednesday night lectures all of the 9 weeks from 6:30 to 7:30. We have 9 different ministers, and that's really exciting. But we also, if you missed any of the Sunday services, we have a YouTube channel, a Facebook page, and a website, and that is all thanks to COVID. So, and many of you know that if you're at any other church, that's what they're doing too. And we are attempting our best, I'm recording right now, to do a hybrid church so that other people can be reached that can't be here. So welcome. I'm Reverend Barbara Williams, and I coordinate all the different ministers come in. It is my delight this evening to bring in a really special friend. And I bragged about her so much this week that she started to kind of go like this. The Sunday was so phenomenal for me personally, and I've been in Unity 40 some years and probably heard every kind of message you could and given lots myself as a Unity minister. And this one touched me. It was like, Reverend Mary Masters would be my minister. She didn't live in Buffalo, and lived in St. Petersburg, Florida, where I'm from. You would be it. And so I'm really touched that you are here and you're sharing, and there's a special reason you're sharing. So I'd like to invite you up and I'd like you to get some background about why this particular week really was just fit for you.
Yeah. I just have to say that, I don't know, I mean, I think I've always enjoyed being in nature. I was kind of a tomboy growing up, and I like doing sports outside, but I think it's part of growing older. I just spend a lot more time looking out the window when I'm meditating, or just going for walks in nature. And, you know, in my Sunday lesson, I shared about the story of Jesus in the boat, calming the storms, crossing from one side to the other. And I said that the boat, to me, you know, what is a boat metaphysically? It represents something that keeps us afloat in turbulent times. It helps us cross from one side of the river to another, from one state of consciousness to another, from our old story to our new story of what we're becoming. And for me, spending time in nature is like that boat. It lifts me up. It keeps me afloat when sometimes when it feels like there's a lot of water coming in and I'm feeling a little swamped or overloaded. You know, that being in that boat, being in nature is what helps me connect with my inner Christ presence. And for us in Unity, we think of Jesus as representing the divine presence within each of us. And so I titled the workshop Going Outside to Go Inside, because when I spend time outside, it helps me turn within. It helps me remember the spiritual nature of life and stuff. And so I found it to be very renewing. And one of the things I was able to do during the pandemic was take the certification program through the Propala Yoga Center in the Berkshires of Massachusetts to become an mindful outdoor educator called MOE, Mindful Outdoor Experiences. And I'm going to share some techniques about that with you today. So first, I wanted to begin with a couple things. I wanted to begin by acknowledging the land that we are on. I've heard several speakers say that this week, and I think we can't acknowledge it enough, the ancestral land of the 6 nations, of the Haudenosaunee people. You know, the Senecas were the keepers of the western door, and the Mohawks were the keepers of the eastern door, and in between there was the Oneida and the Cayuga and Tuscarora and all the different 6 nations. And all, you know, if you just take a moment even and think about what this land must have looked like 5,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, all the people and the more than human life that has walked this planet. And what will it be like for the next 7 generations as a result of our actions? And so one of the things that I've learned is one of the greatest factors, one of the things that has the greatest influence on people making wise choices about stewarding our environment is having had experiences in nature. As a child, perhaps having had a special place that you went to, or where you were spiritually fed, or where, like, you know, there are many of us, I could just ask each one of you to name something, and you could probably go to it in almost a moment. You know, having had an experience like that, and also having had an adult that shared their love of nature and respect for the environment with that child. But those are the single greatest factors that influence people making wise choices as they grow older and becoming an advocate for the environment. So I also want to begin, in Unity, we always begin with a prayer, but today I want to begin with a poem. I think of poems as a prayer as well, and I want to share with you the Eagle poem by Joy Harjo. How many people know who Joy Harjo is? She's from Tulsa, Oklahoma. She's a member of the Tuskegee Nation, and she was the first Native American to serve as a poet laureate for the United States in 2019 to 2021. And she's written some beautiful poems. And I just would invite you to, if you'd like to close your eyes or to gaze out at nature, to hear these words from Joy. To pray, you open your whole self to sky, to earth, to sun, to moon, to one whole voice that is you. And know there is more that you can't see, can't hear, can't know except in moments, steadily growing, and in languages that aren't always sound, but other circles of motion. Like Eagle that Sunday morning over Salt River, circled in blue sky, in wind, swept our hearts clean with sacred wings. We see you, see ourselves, and know that we must take utmost care and kindness in all things. Breathe in, knowing we are made of all this, and breathe, knowing we are truly blessed because we were born and die soon within a true circle of motion. Like Eagle, rounding out the morning inside us, we pray that it will be done in beauty. And so I shared with you, I could share a lot about my experience in nature, and that it feels like being in a boat, uplifted. But I just wanted to invite you for a moment to just take a moment and think about spending time in nature. What is that? What's one word or a phrase that when you spending time in nature for you feels like? Just like to invite us to do a little popcorn. What does it feel like? Connection.
Peaceful.
Peaceful.
Full.
Full.
Release.
Release. Reunited.
Creative.
Creative.
Nurture.
Nurturing. Anyone else? Spending time in nature feels like.
It's sort of interesting. Campers centered by nature.
What is?
Camp murders, Boy Scout camp.
Oh, center of nature. Thank you.
I was on the Girl Scout side
Oh,
and Brownie side.
Oh, wow.
I went to camp in the South.
So for me, it's healing, it's renewing, soothing for my soul. So a mindful outdoor experience. What I have come to appreciate about this, it's a way of spending time connecting with nature. It's a way of connecting with our own inner nature, in nature. And it's a way of using mindfulness meditation techniques, and we're going to learn some of that today. But what I love about this is that you can do it anywhere. You can do it inside. I can be sitting in my chair looking out at a tree, and we'll be able to do some of the techniques I'm talking about. You can go outside in nature. You can do this if you're walking 10 miles on a long hike, if you're walking the Appalachian Trail for 2 months or 6 months. You can share some of these techniques with someone who may be a patient in a hospital bed, or a person, with a retired person in a, assisted living home. They have done studies about the patient outcomes. If a patient is in a bed where they can look out a window, as opposed to in a room where there's no window, their recovery time is shorter. They need fewer pain meds. Their attitude toward life is more hopeful and optimistic. If they just have a window that they can look out and see a tree, as opposed to a window that looks at a brick wall or a room. So the effects of it, someone can be, in a wheelchair and they can do this. And so I want to begin with our mindful outdoor experiences. There are two very fundamental aspects to it. One is the walking, but we don't use the word walking, we use sauntering or wandering. And Victoria Lures in her book and others talk about this very important distinction, sauntering. And I'm going to teach you a special way to do that. But also sit spots, finding a spot to sit down in nature. And I shared with people on Sunday morning that when you're approaching a tree, you want to just trust your intuition, trust your guidance, and just look around and find a tree that you feel drawn to, and then approach that tree with reverence and kindness. Make the shape of the tree, look at the apron of the tree, maybe there's a space to sit down by the tree. But there are a few techniques that I want to just teach you first, and then we will use them in the first exercise I'm going to teach you. But one is sky gazing, and that's just looking with a very soft eyes. Just looking out at the sky, or you could do it with the grass or tree, but with a soft gaze, not focused, or it's just allowing your eyes to relax. My mother used to tell me looking out at a lake and the water rippling in the lake is good exercise for your eyes. It relaxes your eyes. So the act of sky gazing is just looking with a very relaxed and soft. Now the next is deer ears. Deers have large ears, and they have the ability to hear like our dogs. They hear a lot of things that we'll never hear. And so when you're out in nature, you want to be able to hear things in a way that you wouldn't normally hear. So a good way to enhance your hearing is to make deer ears, to cup your ears like this, and maybe just relax your jaw, let your mouth hang open a little. And just this act increases your ability to hear by as much as 40%. You'll be able to hear things. And then I like to talk about hiking with my hands, feeling things. You can hug a tree, but you can just touch the texture of it, or a leaf, or the grass. Anything to make nature, you know, if you feel safe that it's not poison ivy. You know, picking up a stone, or if you're on the beach, or putting your hands in the water, or just allow your hands to explore and experience nature. And so these are some of the techniques that help us to connect and have a little bit deeper experience with nature. And so what I want to do now is teach you a grounding technique, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique. And this is something that that really can be used to relax if you're feeling anxious, or it's used in groups that help people with PTSD or trauma, or recovering from, you know, any kind of high stress or anxiety. That the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding exercise is a way to just put your whole nervous system into a much more relaxed state. And you can do it outside, you can do it inside, looking out a window. And but it's an anchor to help us feel centered and grounded, and to shift our energy. So I'd like to have you practice right now. If we were outside, we could do it, but you're welcome to look out the window. But what I'd like you to do first is just take a moment and get centered in your heart. Deep breath. And the first step is to look around for 5 things that you can see with a soft gaze. 5 different things. It might be the table or chairs. 5 different things that you can just notice in this room or outside. And then become aware of 4 things that you can touch. It might be yourself, your skin, your clothes, the desk in front of you, pants, floor. 4 things that you can just do some hiking with your hands. If we were outside, I'd have you take your shoes off and earthing, connecting with the ground. And then acknowledge 3 things that you can hear. I want you to cup your ears. Be aware of sounds either in this room or outside the room. And then notice 2 things that you can smell. Might be the smell of your skin, or a scent, a very slight scent. Something wafting through the air. If we were outside, I might ask you, you know, what direction is that scent from? And then the last is 1 thing that you can taste. Might be a little linger of some coffee or something you had for lunch, or something you can just taste in your mouth. And so that's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's a simple grounding technique that you can do outside, you can do inside, but it has a way of sort of bringing you back to the center. And so what I wanted to share with you now is a little bit about, you know, they refer to this as earthing, anything that where you really touch the ground. Maybe take off your shoes, or barefoot, or just with your hands, or sitting on the ground, laying on the ground. But there's something, Native Americans really understood this, that when we walk, there's a reason why Victoria talks about in her book, sauntering, wandering is such a different experience than walking. I'm gonna walk and get from here to there as fast as I can. But sauntering is walking. When we walk very slowly and very mindfully, one, it helps us slow down. And I find when we're in the presence of trees, we naturally slow down. And that by walking slowly, we create less disturbance in our environment around us. And we increase our awareness of everything. There's a beautiful wooded area right across from the Hall of Missions. Each morning this week, I've been so enjoying just walking through there, but I'm aware that I walk slowly because I want to create minimal disturbance. But when we're walking, as one Native American people say, think of it as walking on the face of your grandmother, walking on holy land. So you're kissing the earth. And there's something called fox walk. If you're really up to walk like a fox, just slowly lift up one foot and gently put it down with your left pinky first and roll to your big toe and then put your foot down. And then gently pick up your next foot and first set down your little pinky foot, your pinky toe. You can practice this thing. Roll to your big toe and down. Just however it works for you, but to very gently and slowly walk and be mindful that you are, you want to create as little disturbance as possible and be as at one with nature. I can do that, I'll lose my balance. So what I want to do now is introduce you to an exercise, and this is where I will pass out these handouts. And you'll pass them out. And this is called aspect identification. And the idea of this, and there's a worksheet here. I'm going to read it out loud. And if you have a pen, and I have a few pens here, if you have something to write with, that's great. If you don't, you can just kind of do it.
Yeah, and there's one in the back.
Mine. I've got a couple extra pens here. But the idea of this is to, and I'm going to, in a few minutes, give you all an opportunity. You can either choose to walk outside for a few minutes and just notice something in nature that catches your attention, something that you're drawn to. It might be a dandelion, it might be a leaf on a tree. Or you can just do this inside, looking out the windows, or I put a few plants here. Then I invite you to just come up and maybe there's one of these leaves or there's something about this. But and this exercise calls upon your imagination to really get creative. But the idea is to wander around with an open mind and heart. Find something that really attracts you. Something that really draws your eye. And then the key is having had this work for you, you want to become that aspect. So you're not just looking at this plant, you become the plant. If you've ever taken an acting class, or if you know how actors, they become the part. They don't, I'm not just going to talk about something, I'm going to be it. So you become that aspect. Maybe it's the way a certain tree is shaped. And so it's putting yourself into that experience. And then just follow the prompts. And I'm going to read this for the people that are watching us online. But you walk outside, or you look out a window, or you pick some object in the room that just kind of speaks to you right now, that you're drawn to it. Maybe it's beautiful, or maybe even it's a little bit unusual to you. And then you answer this question: as this aspect, the experience I am having is that plant. What is the experience I'm having? and then as this aspect, having this experience, what am I wanting? And what am I lacking? As this aspect, having this experience, wanting or lacking these things, what am I feeling? As this aspect, having this experience, wanting or lacking these things, my statement to the world is, and then how is this aspect like me? What actions might I take, or what are my commitments as a result of seeing that I am like that aspect? I'm like that tree that has many branches. So are you up for playing a little bit? I'd like to just give us, we will just take 10 minutes. This doesn't have to be very long. And you're welcome to step outside the front door if you want, or just look out the window, come up to the window, or come up and look at one of these plants. Just see if there's something that draws attention. And then as that aspect. So we'll start now. We'll come back in 10 minutes. You'll have some time to write your answer in that. We'll invite you to, and if you want to walk very slowly and mindfully.
Please explain what aspect, I guess I don't have a.
Oh,
complete
an aspect
yes,
is a
understanding.
figure or thing in nature. An aspect would be the leaves on the tree or grass or dandelion. An aspect is an object in nature.
I got you. Thank you.
And we can do this inside or outside and just trust what comes.
The borrow one your pen. Oh. Thank you.
I asked them.
I'll take about another minute or two and finish up. And if both the people at your table are done, I would invite you just to turn to the person at your table and just share, what did you learn from this exercise? What did you discover? Yeah, maybe you could-
Set an example, we'll go right in front of the
Yeah, yeah. So what did you?
Parents look great. And so I found myself very racing around like
to allow itself to be nourished, so that
and I feel like
not moving,
extending
I want to fail. To my spirit, all right, nature allows for cycles.
so I guess there was
What are your things? Yeah.
Critical.
and I'm not sometimes even present.
Draws why they're watching it.
Yeah.
Just
Very interesting.
people's recipes. That's exactly it. And then I start thinking about
Yeah. Gotta get busy and do more stuff.
I could just give up nature. If we understood that,
We are one with it. Wow, thank you.
thank you. So
No, I didn't do it this time. The last time I did it, I saw just the way the light. Listen. And then
That's really good.
Because I didn't understand what was happening. But let that-
Just makes you just think about it.
Yeah.
But spiders, we've allowed it for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just gotta focus on it. You focus on it.
Yeah.
That's good.
That was really-
Never knows.
Well, let's come back together. Sounds like we're having some really wonderful sharing here. Is there anybody that would like to just share a little bit of something that they experienced or came to you?
Sure, I will.
All three, okay.
I looked at two trees that were outside to the left of the front door. So when you go out, look at them. They sort of bookend the bike rack. And they are very hemmed in. They're not being treated as they should be. They're not being respected for their growth characteristics and needs. They are, it's just not a good home for them. They're being treated, the trees are being treated like bike racks. And they have been pruned very poorly and inconsiderately. And so I just felt that it was sort of a message about that trees and other plants and living things deserve respect for what they are and what their growth needs and characteristics are, not because they happen to be planted there maybe when it made sense and now it doesn't make sense. It's a message that we ought to be more considerate in our plantings about not, do we like something that's red or do we like something that has berries, or what does the plant need?
That's wonderful that you noticed that. And as that aspect is part of you.
Yeah.
It's like that. Yeah.
I want to, I said that some people think they know me based on one characteristic or one type of interaction, but they really know very little about me and what the whole me needs or wants.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Anybody else that would like to share anything they can?
I just have always been amazed by, not necessarily here, I was looking at this plant and she looks so, this one, she looks so happy to me and everything.
Oh,
And I'm always amazed and I wonder, how do the plants feel that they grow, they're planted, they're there, and they just seem to, no matter where they are, they're content and they trust that they can grow and that they will flourish. And they don't seem to need to be anywhere else. They're so content to be where they are. And as a kid, I remember sometimes this wasn't part of this. It came to me that one or two trees fell in love.
maybe they do.
And they just would say that one of them had to be, or for some reason was cut down. How does the plant that fell in love with the other one feel? Do they grieve? So this was my childhood.
So as that aspect. The experience you are.
Well, yes, and this is an afterthought because it's not what I wrote about. It just came to me now. That's something I carried on.
Anybody else?
I'm looking at a book to recommend. It's dated something like Free Rein, and it's about the life of plants and trees. trees and
Oh.
communication.
I'm sure they do.
And there's been a lot about trees, particularly research about the mother, every forest has a mother tree and the trees
Yes.
communicate with each other. And they're very much.
Yes, please do.
And I feel like they're communicating with us. And I've had experiences sometimes when the wind's blowing a little bit and I look out the window, and the leaves are all kind of just shaking a little bit. And I just like, feels like that tree's just waving at me, It's giving me a blessing. Did anybody else have anything they want to share? Or the idea is that, that nature is not out there, it's not separate from us. It's an aspect of us. We are one.
I can tell you, my home is one of those, this is the plant that I ended up looking at, and the main thing I was looking at was all the holes here, which struck me, and it struck me a little bit as a negative. I don't know anything about plants. And so I came out with things about it being a combination of chaos and order, and of course, me doing that too. And then I described it to Rita, who does know about trees, and she said, oh, yeah, I forget what she called it, but these ones that are down here that are farther away from the center lack holes in the leaves because they haven't had enough sun. And so then I did conclude that the plant needed some things, that it needed some more light and water and so on. I was thinking about the holes in the leaves, and in fact, the exact opposite was the real indicator. Rita said that they needed something other than what they're getting. So I got the right conclusion, maybe for not a very scientific reason.
Thank you.
Well, it might be interesting to share my comments because I looked at that plant and I saw it in a whole different set of eyes, which is very interesting that we can look at the same thing and see very different things. But I saw it as very graceful, the way the leaves fell down, just kind of draped. And I saw that as something that seems to have disappeared in our life during COVID, that gracefulness, that kind of loving way of just being graceful and centered. And I miss the kind of loveliness of life where it seems like we've gotten into total functionality. But I also saw me running around, not being centered and just kind of being graceful with life and letting my monkey mind run and so on. And maybe I need to remember to be more like that plant and just, it seemed graceful to me from here. I wasn't looking real close at it, but just, that's what caught me was the gracefulness of it. So it's interesting how we see different things and how also we also often interpret the same words very differently.
I always remember someone said to me one time that, our lives don't run like a straight line or the hands on a clock. Our lives tend to grow like the trees and the leaves on a tree and the branches of a tree. That I don't know about you, but most of my life hasn't always. I think that you set a goal and you're going to go from point A to point B, but we tend to saunter. Something comes along and takes our interest, and we go in a different direction, and then we flow here and we flow there, and then we look back and it's, oh, what a winding road I've been on, but it's all been beautiful, and I didn't resist it, but I surrendered into it. Just trusted that sometimes life has an even better idea for how we're supposed to grow and unfold. We grow and unfold like flowers and trees, and not like a straight line. Anybody else have anything? Yeah, Jack.
Well, I like the
Uh-huh.
out front of this great big rock.
Oh.
And look at that. Wonder how did it get here from where, and then all of the foundation, all the various things put together, put that rock together. Some solid.
Yeah. So essentially, we're all drawn to something different. And each one of those, I really feel like the objects in nature represent spiritual qualities, and those are qualities that we have within ourselves. And the fact that we're each drawn to something different at a different moment in time, today or tomorrow, I might do the same exercise tomorrow, and it would be something different because of what quality is being maybe called forth in ourselves right now, for us to be reminded that we have that quality. A rock is strong and solid. And flows and has life, and there's beauty in the holes in the leaves. Maybe it's there for a reason to absorb the sunlight more. Go ahead, sir.
I have some land cleared on the other side of the lake. The answer is there's huge rocks in there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But I mean, you could just think about how long that rock has been on this land. And what stories could that rock tell? Of all the people that have walked by that rock, lived in this area. The rain that has fallen. Animals that have scampered along. People that have, that rock has been here, I'm sure, 1,000 years.
It was also interesting during quarantine where I was living, that we had to stay in our apartments around the clock. And my desk looked out on the courtyard and there was a hedge there, and I would see rabbits and squirrels, and sometimes a deer would walk in there to get a drink in the fountain that was close by. And it was amazing how comforting that was to see something else moving out there in nature. I would have never guessed that would have been as significantly heartwarming to me.
Yeah. Well, and Native Americans believe that, when you see an animal, that's animal medicine. It's healing. That, and animals represent different qualities, spiritual qualities within us, You can look it up in books, but I also just like to trust my gut or my feeling, Rabbits represent abundance, energy and zeal.
I happen to have seen recently 3 times a bear. Once was, I discovered that we owned a cabin in Sheffield, Pennsylvania, and the bear must have gone down to the river, which is right in front to drink, and I caught it as I was going up. And then another time, this was the one that was really meaningful, is right outside my bedroom door in Jamestown. Wow. In the middle of the night, I hear it clatter, and my husband has restless legs, so he was sleeping in another room. And I got up, and there was a bear right outside our window, going for the suet that I had hung. And I thought, oh my Lord, I can't believe that this has happened. And then the third time was also near the cabin. Now, I thought, I have never in 16 years that we've owned this place seen a bear and then at our house. So I looked it up to see what the Indians thought of that. And it meant, according to them, that it was letting me know that I was a lot stronger than I was giving myself credit for. And the truth is that I was having a time, a stretch of time right there coincidentally where I was thinking in those terms. What if I faced something which I won't reveal, how would I feel about that? Would I be strong enough to survive? You're so perhaps
All the time to draw upon the strength within you.
apparently, and I don't poo-poo that because really coincidences don't exist in my life, so I take heed.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I believe that too. There's no accident. I mean, are visited by someone, something that is more than human. That we share this planet. Okay, well, we're getting close to the time. I want to just close with 2 things that will do the To just remind you again of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding exercise to take us out because let's just take a breath and look around and find 5 things that you can see, 5 different things. And 4 things that you can touch. 3 things that you can hear. 2 things that you can smell. And 1 thing that you taste. So I'd like to leave us with this poem by Terry Tempest Williams, who will be speaking tomorrow morning. And, wild mercy. The eyes of the future are looking back at us, and they are praying for us to see beyond our own time. They are kneeling with hands clasped that we might act with restraint, that we might leave room for the life that is destined to come, to protect what is wild, to protect what is gentle. Perhaps the wildness we fear is the pause between our own heartbeats, the silent space that says we live only by grace. Wilderness lives by this same grace. Wild mercy is in our hands. By Terry Tempest Williams. So thank you for coming tonight.